have never wished my son could walk. I always assumed he would until I learned he wouldn't. All kids learn to walk, right? But our baby wasn't meeting his gross motor milestones. And so at 14 months, after several appointments and evaluations, he was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA type 2, and we were told he would never walk. So what use is there in wishing for something you know will never happen? We take it for granted, this walking thing, but I'm okay with it, the fact that my son doesn't walk. And from him, I've learned that walking is not the most important thing I do either. I'm not saying getting the news wasn't devastating, because it was. After waiting almost 2 weeks for results of the genetic blood test, the three of us, my husband, our 14-month-old, and I, were called into the neurologist's office. She examined Oscar briefly, then said, "So, a diagnosis of spinal muscular atrophy means..." And I didn't hear anything she said after that, because even though she had called us in on New Year's Eve, I still hadn't seen this coming. After the appointment, we sobbed right out loud through the hollow caverns of the parking garage with our boy in our arms. We cried for days, for weeks, really. We held our boy, our happy, smiling boy, our boy who was still exactly the same boy he had always been, even before we had ever heard of SMA. We told family and friends what we knew, that Oscar had this thing called SMA that is kind of like muscular dystrophy, but not exactly. We told them we were sad, very sad. But we also told them we somehow knew we'd learn more about being human from him than we ever could have imagined. We picked ourselves up from the cold tile floor and began to put our lives back together in this new shape. Oscar started physical therapy in our home, delivered entirely through play. With the guidance of this amazing physical therapist, we brought equipment into our house, a stander, supportive seating systems, and various things on wheels, including, eventually, a tiny wheelchair for Oscar, who was by then 19 months old. Hands on the wheels, he could hardly propel himself more than a few feet at a time across a smooth floor, but still, it was a tiny taste of independence. 6 months after diagnosis, we went to the National SMA Conference, like deer in the headlights. We saw gaggles of teenage girls talking a mile a minute, making friendship bracelets and steering clear of their parents. And they were all in power wheelchairs. We met doctors and learned things about genetics, clinical care, and equipment. We went to a research session that talked all about the incredible advancements happening in the world of SMA, possible clinical trials. And at that session, we watched other parents ask when the cure was coming. And in that moment, we realized a cure was not our goal, had never been our goal from day one, and that it never would be, not for our boy. For the greater good, sure, of course, but not for our Oscar. Somehow in this process, we realized that our goal for our child was still as it always had been, to nurture him, to love him for exactly who he is in every moment of every day, not to fix him, not to reach toward making him different from who he is, has always been. And so it has always been. We bought a ranch house in the suburbs and a minivan, two things I had never imagined for myself. But these two things give my son what he needs: access. And then there is Oscar's power wheelchair. The first time he sat in it and put his hand on the joystick, he took off. At age 3, beaming ear to ear, he zoomed away into the neighbor's yard, away from his parents. He zoomed across the grass independently, not being pushed by someone else. And then, when he was ready, he came back. One might imagine the occasion of a child getting a first wheelchair to be sad or heavy or difficult for a parent. But for me, that was unequivocally one of the happiest days of my life. And so we soldier on. Yes, we face challenges other parents don't, and that is complicated. But the love I have for my son is not complicated. He is 7 now, and our goal is the same it always has been: to raise a happy, well-adjusted child who is proud of who he is.